Well, hi again. Let's see if we could try this one more time. I'm attempting to bring a guest along. So, hopefully, if you're on the Ghost Stories with Spooky Miss TI page, you can click on this live stream and join me here again. You, what's the word? The people that stick with things, you tenacious, and like trying to reconnect again. Okay, watching for Courtney to come back on. Hi, Zach. Hi, Carly. Thanks for coming back. Let's see if Courtney comes back. Tonight we're going to talk about. I'm trying to bring a friend on who has some stories of her own. She's had, and her boyfriend, her fiance, have had some pretty crazy things happen. Keeps going out and in, so this may be a crazy night. Okay, trying to invite Courtney back on screen. Bring them on camera. Ask. Let's see if it works.
I got you.
There you are. You froze up for a
I
while
did.
and then you were gone.
Well, I think the issue was I was trying to connect to my AirPods because I had you echoing in like a loop.
Oh,
But
goodness. Is
then
that,
it froze everything, so we're going to forget about that.
okay, doesn't matter. It's in the past. So tonight, Courtney's going to tell us, is your fiance? It's fiance, right? There he is. Hello. So we're going to hear some stories from you folks, and then maybe afterwards we'll talk about it a little bit. So have at it. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Courtney, and this is Andrew, my fiance.
Hi.
So I'm actually going to have Andrew start off because this is really his story. I'm just kind of stuck in the middle of it. Well, if you want to
I'll turn this
take
a little
that
bit for me so I don't break it. All right. All right. So I guess the best way to start this would be from the beginning. So we're going to be talking about my little friend Shadow, who's kind of been with me forever. Best way to describe it. And ever since I was like 4 or 5 years old is when I really noticed this strange looming shadow, like literally like a giant shadow of a person, like all around me, especially when it's dark out. I would see like this almost old hunched figure in my closet. And you're a kid, you think, oh, it must be a monster or something, and then people tell you, no, 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 it's not real, it's not real. Well, this thing has stuck with me. It would follow me everywhere. I could almost like feel something watching me, even when I would go out during the day. If there's a dark area, say I went out to my grandparents' cottage, especially there, out in the woods, there'd be a man following me as I walk through the woods. Off in the distance, where it's a lot darker in the more shaded area, but I could clearly see someone. And even, my cousins would see it too. And so we'd leave. Try to bring someone back, he's gone. So we're just like, oh, maybe just a person walking in the woods. So for a time, I kind of just played it off as, oh, this is my imagination, blah, 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 blah. And I would ignore this thing and all the signs that, oh, hey, there's something weird going on. Like a battery just came out of nowhere and flew by my head. Oh, I can't explain it, but a battery flew by, so just my imagination. And fast forward to my teens, I had completely forgotten about any of these occurrences. I barely remembered the shadow person anymore. But all of a sudden, like I was listening to some random music, and then all of a sudden, it's like I heard glass shatter, and like a wave of fear hit me like no other. Anxiety and anger, depression, like everything hit me so hard, and I was fearful. And at the time, with everything I was going through, like I would that was just a random thing. Like I don't know why I was even afraid. So I started, feeling something watching me, you know. I'd even like pull the covers over my head at like 16, 17 years old. And I'm like, there's something in my room trying to like peep on me while I'm trying to sleep. And I don't know what this is. And I started like, okay, well, I see it's in my closet because I took over my sister's room at the time. And just to talk about her room before, I went up there once. I looked in her mirror because she had this big, big mirror. I stared in it for a little bit. I don't know what possessed me to. But all of a sudden, like I saw like the most demonic face you've ever seen. It was like an animal just baring its teeth and growling at me in the mirror. It freaked me out. And I thought nothing of that either. And like now I took over her room where clearly I felt fear. And in her closet would be where this entity, this massive, and I mean like, I'm 6'2". And as a child, I remember this thing being big. But even now, this thing towers over me. It's probably like 8 to 9 feet tall. Like it's massive. And I would see it in the closet. So I'm like, okay, just my imagination. I'm Catholic, so I'm going to do, my thing of, here's a cross. You're going to sit in, like, whatever you are, you're going to get punished and you're going in the closet. And I'd start making fun of it. I would antagonize, like, long before I even met Courtney, I would make fun of whatever this is to make myself feel better. I would use homophobic slurs on it, or I'd just name call or call it this or that to make myself feel better. Not knowing, clearly, I was angering something spiritual. Because, I was taught that the dead stay where they belong. They go where they need to. They don't come back. They don't bother us. That's how what my dad told me. So I believe, like, my dad's pretty spiritual. I believe him. Because I come from a very spiritual family. Very, very, very religious. So I believe my dad fully. I'm like, okay, you're smart. I know. I believe you. Fast forward, I meet Courtney. And she starts opening my eyes to, like, the spiritual world more, And she stays over for a few times, like, and God forbid, like, week 1, she has to bring up the fact that, was your dad looking at us while we were sleeping in the same bed together? And I'm like, no, my dad wouldn't do that. Also, my dad gets home at, like, 3 in the morning, so no, he didn't do that. My dad wouldn't look at you. And he wouldn't peep on me either. And he's like, well, someone was. And I'm like, maybe it was your mom. No, my mom sleeps downstairs because she can't even walk up the stairs because of her leg. Well, someone was up here. Oh, well, it's probably a shadow. She's like, what? Oh, yeah, shadow. It's this thing. Like, maybe you just saw, like, out of the corner of your eye, like I see every once in a while. It's just a thing I see. That could be a spirit. No. Continuing on, and then she really sees it. She started bugging me when she comes over, like, there's something in your closet. I'm like, okay, you're making, you're breaking my little bubble I had. Now you're bringing the thing into me.
There was one night in particular where I had left his house at, what was it, around 11 midnight?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere between there. And I only lived a few miles away from where he was staying at his parents.
Called me in a panic.
And I had left his house. It was late at night. And I was driving. Roads were completely empty. It was like I think it was like, what, Sunday to Saturday night. Like, it was dead. And I was driving along the street heading towards where I lived. And all of a sudden, I see something out of the corner of my eye. And then my car, literally, it felt like I had hit stone, to where it was just like, bam. And I came to a halt. And then I see a big shadowy figure run across the street. And I do a double take. I'm like, what the hell was that? And I was like, and then the thing with shadow is, you get a certain feeling when he's around. And it's really not comfortable. It's like someone's holding your shoulders down and forcing your shoulders down. and a pit just sits in your chest and your heart feels like it's 1,000 pounds. And that's what I had. I had that feeling. And I get outside of my car, and there's a good sized dent in the front of my car. And I call him, freaking out, going, oh my God, I think I just hit Shadow.
And I'm like, because around the time, like, we actually both realized, like, there's something going on here. Whatever this thing is, it's real. And we started looking into what it could be. We still have no idea what this is even. But what we determined is whatever this thing is, it is attached to me, and it doesn't like other people, especially this one, because this one...
I'm pagan, so a lot of my beliefs are rooted in the spiritual world and natural world that we live in. And what happens when I have loved ones that come into my life, I tend to put a lot of protection around them and myself, and I tend to branch out my energies to protect those that I love. And with him, we were, 4 months into our relationship, I think, when that happened?
3 or 4 months, yeah.
Yeah, so I was starting to put my energies around him and start protecting him. And what we call Shadow started to really lash out.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that I was coming around, and the entities started to lash out more and more as our relationship grew. I remember one time in particular when were we coming from Traverse City? Or we were coming up from, I think we were heading home from, Cadillac, or we were visiting some family. And my little sister was sitting in the back seat of my car while we were driving home, and it was dark. It was probably around 8, 9 in the evening. And my sister starts freaking out in the backseat. And at this time, we hadn't even really told her about Shadow. She didn't have any knowledge, we probably mentioned it here or there, but nothing significant. And my little sister started freaking out. And I look in my rearview mirror, and Shadow is sitting right next to her. And you get that sinking feeling again, like I usually do, and we all kind of just drive in silence for a good 20 minutes till he finally just disappeared.
There's a few times where we would go up and you'd see a person, and this is in front of the headlights, where you'd be able to see a person running clearly across the road. You'd even probably, and I'd have my high beams on going through a snowstorm, or a heavy snow, not a snowstorm, but you'd be able to see a person and what they're wearing. This would be as if this darkness itself walked in front of the light, and you couldn't see past to the other car in front of you, or sometimes he'd even just be in the back of the car, where there would be a car behind us. You can see in the rearview mirror that there's a car behind us, but you look in the back, and there's no light coming from the headlights of the other car. It would be just pure black, because Shadow doesn't like light. He's I'd turn on lights to, and I put crucifixes up to trap him in my closet so he couldn't escape, because I'm like, well, if you're going to be around here and you're going to be, rotten and terrible to people, then here you go. This is your punishment. You get to stay in the closet. You're going to be in your little dark hole for...
When we first moved in together, our first apartment, we had a small, 400 or 500 square foot loft apartment. And it was tiny. And we were on, an upper level part. And there was a tree that was right behind our apartment, and there was the bathroom, and you could see the tree. And I like to keep all the windows open and sunlight because I don't like darkness, for good reason. And there was a few nights, because you have to walk all the way down the staircase from the loft to go to the bathroom, and I get up to pee at 2, 3 in the morning. Perfect timing. And there was one night I remember in particular where I had gone to go downstairs, and it felt like something had pushed me down the staircase. And I slipped down the staircase, and it was a good fall, and woke him up And I limped to the bathroom because I still had to pee at 3 in the morning. And I remember looking out the window, and I don't usually look out the window because one of my big fears is peeping Toms. Even though we live in a 2nd-story apartment where no one can even get to the window, it's one of my biggest fears. And I remember looking out the window, and Shadow was sitting in the tree branches watching me. And I just remember, like, with Shadow, he almost carries, like, he feeds on the negative energies and, like, especially anger. He used to have a lot of, like, really, really bad anger issues before I met him.
He wouldn't even, it's not like he would just feed on, like, oh, I'm in a bad mood. He would make me in a bad mood. He would cause it. His literal, like, presence would upset me. I'd get into, like, such a terrible mindset. Like, I could tell when he was, like, this, it's literally how I could tell he was around, because all of a sudden I would be angry. I would have an anxiety of fight or flight, and I'm ready to fight whenever, you know, like, I'm ready to go, like, if I'm in a situation like that. So I would get in a situation where I'm angry, I'm ready to fight, which, you know, it's not how I try to be. And it'd be over the smallest thing, like, oh, someone said something a little rude to me at work. I'm ready to beat you to the dirt. That's not right. There's something going on here. And sure enough, you know, there's a few, you know, just areas that are really dark in my job where, sure enough, he's sitting right there. Or he's peeking around a corner, and I'm just like, okay, I see what this is.
And he stopped coming around after our, 3rd apartment at Arbor Trails?
No, he stopped coming around at this apartment, but that's only after I started praying, like, something happened, and we were both in such, like, a funk of depression and anger, and we were mad at each other. Like, this was one of the worst.
We literally would fight, like, every day, and we never ever fight.
And so, like, I started praying. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, I'm just gonna start praying, because she's like, I'm gonna do a cleanse, because clearly because we couldn't get rid of him.
He would sit, like, we have sliding glass doors in our master bedroom, and it leads to our balcony, and he would literally just sit right outside the balcony and look through the windows all night long. And we could just, even if we closed the curtains, we could still feel him watching us. And he couldn't really, my strengths with my energies and, like, my protection and stuff, it wasn't strong at that time. I hadn't really learned how to make it super strong to where things really couldn't enter the home yet. I'm still working on that a little bit, but it's getting better. And so he would be able to enter the home here and there, and then I was doing, like, I would cleanse the house with Palo Santo and sage, and
once a week.
Oh, sometimes more than once a week. Sometimes 3 times, just to make the house feel like there was some sort of positive energy, because it was so strong.
Like, because he's been, like, Shadow's an old spirit, because when I was 19, and this is the only reason I know he's really old, and he's he's still around. I know he is, because he's not done with me yet.
Well, when we talk about him, he likes to come around and make a visit.
But when I was 19, I died. I went into full cardiac arrest, which just means your heart stops. And I was dead for 23 minutes. And I remember vividly after, you know, passing, like, I was in a room, a dark room, with him. He was sitting in a chair, and this was a very large, old man. Like, you could tell this thing is tired. It's old, and it sat there. It didn't do anything malicious. I don't remember too much about the feelings other than, like, this thing is old, and it's in front of me. You feel shadow right now, I can tell you.
I do, that's why I'm shaking.
Shadow makes you cold.
It does, that's why I have a blanket on. Anytime I speak about him, I get really cold.
So I have to tell you that as you're talking, I'm feeling something here, and it's shivers and stuff. So yeah, just want to let you know. And
it doesn't surprise me.
No, he's
yeah.
The thing thing with Shadow is there was a moment where we went to Leroy to go meet with some of Courtney's friends. They pulled out a Ouija board. And this is the moment,
yes.
I know you forgot about this.
I did.
So this is the moment.
Shadow
doesn't like other spirits. Shadow doesn't like anything else to even mess with me because Shadow has he's laid claim to me, and he was pissed that night because Courtney and her friends were messing with a Ouija board. They were doing all these little spiritual games and stuff that, kids do or whatever. But Shadow was mad. I remember, I'm like, I can't be here. And Shadow was literally like, Shadow was doing what he normally does to me, which is making me angry and everything. He was making everyone ready to kill each other.
The whole room was just red hot. And then when we started playing with the board, Andrew was sitting on the bed, and then he started speaking for the board.
I could basically hear Shadow. I was saying what Shadow was gonna because I knew Shadow was messing with him. I'm like, you guys need to stop, because he's right outside. I'm telling Courtney. Courtney's like, shh, stop talking. She was getting mad at me for even hey, Shadow's outside. She's like, I don't want to hear it. Don't even talk to me. She didn't even want me to speak because I was upsetting her. And Shadow was saying, why did you show him this game or this to invite this other thing around? Or why did you do this or that?
If you remember Connor Smith, Craig Smith's son, he was in our little group, and he was really into the game Scratches. I don't know if you've ever... It's basically, it's one of those, I don't know, he really took it seriously. And it was one of those, you close your eyes and you say, scratches, 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 demon, demon, demon. And
nice.
yeah, it's great.
Oh,
and I wouldn't play it, but he liked to play it a lot. And we played that. And it would invite whatever the fuck to basically scratch your back and feed off your energies, was basically the basis of it.
I had hand marks.
And he did that a couple times on my friend Michaela, and she had another friend over.
John.
Did he play on Johnny?
He did it to John, and did it to Michaela. I'm the one who ended up with big old handprints on my arms, though, because Shadow was all around. I would close my eyes, and it was that night, I could see what Shadow looked like. He's not an old man. I can tell you that. I don't know what really to describe him, like an old animal person kind of looking thing. But I don't know what to describe him as. But he was mad that night. He put my anger that he normally does for them or for me into them. I scared the hell out of him because I'm like, this is what he's saying. This is nope, this is, because the second I'm like, okay, since you guys want to play with this so much and I'm literally saying the words and you're just ignoring me, I'm going to come in and I'm going to play this lovely little game with you. So I joined their circle, and this is when they really start paying attention, because now I'm talking for the board as the board's moving. And Shadow, and this is one of the moments I decided he has to go, because he brought up he mentioned my friend who passed away with cancer, and I still take that to offense. He said that my name's Josh. I'm like, no, you're not. Don't lie to me. Tell them your name, and he starts. It's S, and then Connor was trying to say something. I'm like, nope, it's SHADOW, and he's like, no, how would you know? I'm like, it's Shadow.
And Connor got really mad and closed the board.
No, Connor didn't get very mad. Connor freaked out because he looked behind him.
Oh, did he? I didn't pay attention.
I remember because Connor saw something, and I know he saw something, especially because he's because he looked back at me, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, we're done, and he closes the board really quickly. And for the rest of the night, Shadow stopped. I could almost, since being with Courtney, I've almost trained myself to feel the tether that was there. I could feel where Shadow was, because there would be other times where we'd do something weird, or we go to like a haunted place, and Shadow would be like trying to draw my attention towards him, because he wants me to focus on him and not go to something else. And it wasn't until that one night where Courtney and I started fighting, where I started praying, I broke the bond between us. I can still feel him, but not as strong. But when I broke the bond, like, the entire apartment shook. Everything shook. Everything,
crazy.
like the wind, like it was a windy, stormy night.
Yeah, it was like
it stopped. Everything stopped right after that. Like, boom.
Dead
Like,
quiet.
no animals, no cars, no wind, no sound. Like, everything was gone.
It was what, 2 a.m?
It was
late.
It was late, yeah.
It was like 2, 3 a.m, and we went and we're like, let's just, after everything had went quiet, we're like, let's take this off. We'll go for a walk with our dog around the complex. And we walked outside, and I felt really uncomfortable.
It was the most angry, like, you could feel like the animosity. And I used old, like, I don't know, and I was possessed while reading these prayers off and saying them. They were prayers of protection, prayers of breaking enchantments and whatnot. And
yeah, he broke all my stuff.
I destroyed. I broke everything.
He broke all my bonds that I had
like,
to rebuild for like a month.
I read 5 prayers, like, and I started off like, oh, I'm just half reading, and then I started getting louder and more like into the prayer and taking it seriously. And I don't even know why I was doing it. Something possessed me to do it, whether it was a dead family member or something, or God, or who knows what made me read the way I read. But it broke the bond between us. He's still there. He's trying, like, he's since I broke it, though, he started going between her family. He'd go around my family.
My mom had a really shitty boyfriend and a very, very toxic daughter of his. And they weren't the best of people. They were actually the reason why I moved out of my mother's house so soon. And it was a very toxic situation. And after Andrew had broken that, Shadow started just going and attaching to anyone near us that has any sort of negativity.
Just to feed.
Just to, I don't even know what.
He couldn't get, because the thing was, he couldn't get to me. And I knew he was around, but he couldn't get to me.
But there was so much negativity at my mother's house. We had gone over there one evening, and we're like, Andrew turned to me at dinner. He's like, Shadow is here. And I'm like, no, you're kidding. We fixed that. He's like, no, he's here. And Haley, which is his daughter, was staying in my room, my old room. And she was really afraid of the closet because something was in the closet. And Haley started mentioning this. And Andrew's like, it's Shadow. Shadow is here. And my mom is very, she's an empath. She's really good at picking up on feelings and stuff. And my mom could sense the energies of that. And she kept telling us that there was something here too. And she thought it was Shadow because we had explained to her Shadow before. And she had asked me if I could cleanse the house. And it was a couple weeks later, and they had broken up, my mom and her boyfriend, and her boyfriend and his daughter had moved out, but Shadow was still hanging around. And so my mom asked me to cleanse the house, and I black salted the entire perimeter of the property, and I put up a sigil above her door. And it's literally my proudest moment ever. It's a little side tidbit. It was a sigil to make sure no negative energies could enter this home. Well, the daughter was nothing but negative energies. And they entered the house to come pick up their stuff. And Haley turns to her father and goes, I can't be here. And turned around and left the house. And then Shadow started hanging out with them for a while.
Not long enough.
And then Andrew started seeing him again at work.
Because because of course, any little thing, that upset me, would bring him back. Of course, I'm not that lucky, but I don't have the same connection with him anymore. I know that, and he's still looking for a way in. And he's come into the apartment a few times, and
I've had to lock the apartment.
There's been other things that have come. I just kind of bring dead things to me.
I think it's because he has that connection with the afterlife, and he's almost like a beacon for those of the spiritual realm. And they see him as, oh, well, there's a touch of the afterlife here. Here's the light. Let me go towards this. And it's daily that I've got to remove something from this damn apartment. Even with my protection up and whatnot, there's still things that squeeze by.
Yep.
Like all the time. Like we've currently got, getting off the topic of shadow. Oh, we've got 3 now? I know of 2 of them. There's Lori. She's a young girl. Lori doesn't bother us.
Not a child, though.
Well, she portrays herself as a child. Probably about...
You're right.
Huh?
Andrew's right.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. She portrays herself as a child, about 7 or 8. Long, dark, black hair and a white nightgown. And she likes to open up the cupboards all the damn time. And then there's Cecile, who Andrew really, really doesn't like. Mm-hmm. She is a elderly woman, probably in her late 80s, long silver hair, and she also wears a white nightgown.
Attempted to portray herself because we attempted to contact to see what they were.
I only know their names because I used a pendulum to speak with them, and she decided to tell Andrew that it was his, what was it, great aunt or something,
great grandmother or great aunt. And I'm like, I don't know if I trust this at all.
But you were really happy about it at first.
I was happy, but I feel like that was its emotion coming towards me to try and fool me. But I did my research and no, it was not. And which I'm like, okay, you were trying to latch on to me. I don't care for that. You just tried to portray yourself as a family member.
I had asked her why she had lied to us, and she just replied, it was easier.
Yeah.
And that was the only reply we had ever gotten. Oh, I don't know about this third one.
The third one...
Is it new?
I don't know, because again, I don't feel Shadow like I used to, but I know that he's still around. It could have been Shadow, but it felt more feral, like an animal.
Oh, are you talking about the Shadow thing that was running around the house the one time?
Yes. Like this thing was...
I forgot about that.
Yep.
It's just so natural nowadays just to have spooks and stuff around the house.
I honestly think it's Shadow, and I think he's hungry. And he's getting to that point where, like, because you can feel a malignance in the air sometimes, even when that thing's around. And it still does the same thing that Shadow does. And I know it's bigger than what it is, but it tries to kind of like a dog almost, or like some kind of feral. And I can't even describe what kind of animal it is. I know it's not an animal. I can tell you that for sure. But there was
a beast of some kind.
There was one night she thought it was our dog running around, and I'm like, that's not Bandy. And I pointed out that our dog sleeping in his bed, and she's like, well, what was that? I'm like, I go look, and then I just see it like peeking from behind my chair, like just like I saw just something like doing this, and then and I'm like, yep, well, there's some kind of spook here. I don't know if it's Shadow or what, but this thing is attempting to seem smaller than what it is, and I can tell that it's a lot bigger.
We recently had to put down our cat, and she was only 2 years old, and our laundry room is rather large. It's a pretty big room, usually like probably about the size of normal people's bathrooms. Like it's big. And at night, my cat was a little hell on wheels. She would get into everything. So at night, we would put her in the laundry room so we would have a house still standing. And she would jump up on the water heater. And it's a very distinct sound of her jumping up on the water heater. And I started to hear that after she had passed.
Not okay.
Yeah. It's not blue.
She thought it was blue,
it's...
but like that was whatever this, either shadow or not, whatever it is in the laundry room for the most part, but still running around, tries to hide behind things. So, which is why, again, I think it's shadow.
I've just been lazy and haven't cleansed the house because nursing school is tiring.
And I don't want to break everything again, so that way she has to redo everything.
Yeah, it took me a lot to rebuild back what I had after he had broke everything that one time.
Right. Like instant Vesta powder. Vesta. So Andrew, I've got a question for you. Can you remember the very first time, think back, not the first time you were frightened by this shadow, but can you think back to the first time you were aware of its presence?
Yep.
When was it?
I was a couple years old. There's two instances. One, I remember them so vividly. One, I was in a car seat and I fell asleep, and then I remember some weird, I ended up realizing I was asleep, but then I remember this entity was like one for you, one for me, and then all of a sudden it changed from an old lady to like a monstrous thing. That could have been a shadow. Don't know what that was entirely. Could have just been child mind freaking out in a dream. But the one I definitely know is shadow was, I was like 4 or 5, and my dad come in to say goodnight, and as he walks by to turn off my light and turn on my night light, there's something behind him. I pointed out, my dad doesn't see anything in my closet, and this is back when I lived in my downstairs, or slept in the downstairs room, and this thing was bigger than him. Like, no, that there's something there. I thought it was death. Like, whatever it was scared me to all hell and back. This, like, I know this was shadow, like, because this was the start where, like, that I can clearly remember that I now have this big entity following me everywhere I go, everywhere. Like, and I mean, like, I only named Shadow after Shadow from Bear in the Big Blue House, because where Shadow, because I'd start singing that song, and I'd be looking around, and I almost made it a game at times where, okay, where are you at? Oh, there you are. Because just be around a corner, be peeking, he'd be like, there's 4 times that Shadow has been no more than 3 feet from my face. Like, Shadow doesn't like me being too close to him. Like, if I get close, he will book it. He doesn't want me close to him, but he'll be close enough, or he'll be far away. There's one, like, because where I had my bed at my parents' place, it was right around the corner. Like, my bed was basically right next, because I didn't have a door. In my sister's old room, there was no door or anything to like block anything. So you could get up, walk right downstairs.
It was kind of like one of those bonus room areas.
Yeah.
That would be like above a staircase.
And there's probably like 3 feet at most from my bed to the little corner, and you see him right there. And it wasn't some subtle thing like, oh, I'm just barely peeking like that much. No, it's like my head's right here. You see something looking at you. And
I had a theory for a while, because my theory was that when he was a child, he had astral projected unknowingly and brought back one of the shadow people. Because a lot of the descriptions that he had explained to me at first of shadow people was that shadow people tend to be like 7, 8 feet tall, and they're literally just shadows of people, and like they look like tall men. And for a while I had that theory until he really started to get more and more personal with our lives. And I was like, okay, maybe that's not a theory.
We've had it.
And then I threw up on one of my pagan Facebook groups because I had a photo that I'd taken of him and his two nieces at the country club. And Shadow was all the way towards the woods in the back, but he was there.
Yep.
And I threw that photo up on my Facebook group just to see for shits and giggles what people could see in this photo. And people started editing the photo and circling right where he was, right where he was, right where he was. And then on another post, I had told the story of Shadow, and because I wanted to figure out what this thing could be. And there was one theory where someone had said possibly as a child, he might have, my battery's about to die, he may have manifested it and then basically just given it life. And then there was another theory of being. No,
I don't think that either.
Yeah, I didn't think that one was either. And then there was a poltergeist theory.
Also no.
And what were the other ones? There was some crazy ones.
Someone said something weird that, like, I made my own imaginary friend, and it became real. And I'm like, if I made him, you'd be able to control that kind of a thing almost, or like maybe have some influence over that. I got no influence over this thing.
I had to fix this 1 sec. My battery's dying.
So,
have you ever heard of, first of all, you realize this is not a formerly human
this is not
energy.
Human.
Have you ever heard of Djinn?
Yes.
The Djinn?
Alcohol?
Because,
I've heard of...
yeah, the Djinn, like with tonic. No, this is DJINN. That's what they're called in Middle Eastern culture. But there are entities that fit that mold in every culture. And these are never human entities. And if you in Middle Eastern culture, where Djinn comes from, like one is very, nasty, and this is the shaitan, and that's where the word Satan comes from. And a lot of our words for demons and whatnot come from Djinn lore. And one of the types of entities that all cultures speak of is this kind of never human entity that attaches to us, that we are attached to, that lives like we do, not a carbon-based entity, but a thinking entity with a lifespan. You talk about it being very old. The fact that you mention it being old is indicative. Sometimes these are called elementals of different kinds. Sometimes they're attached to places on the earth. Sometimes they're attached to certain rocks, certain places. But there are in lore Djinn who attach to a family or a person. And these will have, first of all, sometimes you can have some that are very possessive. And this sounds like that this one of yours is very possessive.
Just a little
that when
bit,
someone else comes into your life, it will get your attention. It feeds off of it manifests from your energy. It's sort of symbiotic. It can protect you, and it can also, its possessiveness can get to a point where, just like if you were in an extremely possessive relationship with a living human, it can become destructive. And so you cannot control these things no more than you could control another human being, but you can set boundaries. And it sounds to me like you intuited to set boundaries. And when you talked about where you said the prayers and you became more and more fervent with your prayers, whatever words you were speaking, you had internalized the meaning of those. And by doing that, you set your boundaries. And so now this entity, and you call it Shadow, but that's not its name.
No, it's just it's a pet name I gave it. But even then, I
Exactly.
hate the fact that I named it.
No, that's
It
fine, because listen to this part of the lore, okay? One of the things is that the names also have power. Like you can, if you speak the name of a Djinn, of an entity, um, and conjure it through its name to invoke it for something that you want, um, what happens is it kind of, it works, but you don't own them, they end up owning you. So by you creating a way to address it or to describe it without giving any power to its own name is probably a really good thing.
Why did you do a bad?
So, okay.
Oh God.
It's funny you say that. So talking back about toxic people and whatnot, about people getting kicked out of a house because of Courtney. Well, so I didn't really like these people. I purposely brought Shadow over there because, again, like I said, the where Shadow kind of became the thing to, like, I almost call Shadow. I did that a lot over there around the time that, they started to really get bad and terrible, and around the time that they actually started to, like, they're in the process of, like, this is a breakup happening, we're just waiting for the end result. So I would start bringing Shadow over more and more, and hopefully trying to just dump Shadow onto them.
Yeah, you realize that can't work.
No, it didn't. And I realized now that, like, I was probably more.
But by acknowledging this entity's presence and having it affect them, and it sounds like it has a taste for extreme emotion.
Yeah, a little bit.
And what it's been able to do is rile people up. It may also have a taste for extreme emotion that is not anger or destruction. It could have just a taste for extreme emotion, because when we have extreme emotion, it raises our vibration, whatever it is. When you fall in love, it raises your vibration. I mean, the good vibration, but also anger raises vibration. You could feel it in the room. You can feel fear. And all of these things that raise vibration bring us closer to the vibrations of these entities and give it power. And so by bringing it, by acknowledging it, and I wouldn't call it may be him, you would keep referring to it as him. So it could be a male energy. But this person, and they're people, I think, just non-carbon based people, was able to go and have a nice feast, a nice little energy meal. But then afterwards, it was like outside your door, and because now it's regained energy. So these, and in the lore, what happens is this, when you said this was the thing that really brought me to this, to go, aha, I think I know who this is. When you talk about when your heart stopped and you found yourself in this big empty room, when you died, and this entity was there with you, that was like that's what this is, because these entities are with us from birth to death, and they're part of the team that brings us in and goes with us when we go out. And if it sounds like you have a very possessive Djinn, though, that this is a very possessive entity, and that's why
it wants more than just
scares you. It scares you to manifest more, to make it easier for you to see it and to feel it, and it gives it power. And one of the things that you can do, that if it's like outside your window or any place else, and I have found this to work every time, and every time I've told somebody to do this. Best way to shift energy is with laughter. So you fake it first. You start by just laughing, fake, and then you just think about something, especially if you're together, you know, somebody starts laughing, even if you don't know what they're laughing about, you start laughing. Well, when you laugh, what happens is not only are you raising the vibration, but every laugh, the way your body works, the ha 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 ha, you can feel it. Boom, 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 boom. You're pushing your energy out. And you'll see that people who start to giggle in really stressful situations, that's what they're doing. They're changing the energy around them. And when this very possessive entity, don't laugh at it, I would not recommend that in any way. I would not like ridicule or say you have no power here, because that's bull, because they do have power.
Don't look at me. I've only done that quite a lot.
So, but laughing about something else, like there you are, and just and fake it until you're laughing, and it will dissipate. You'll watch it just go. And that's whatever you run into like that.
Do not summon him just so you can try it. I know exactly what you're thinking.
No.
Don't bring it so you could try that.
Listen to Misty.
Really, I'm serious, because it is aware of our conversation.
Yeah. Oh
right
yeah,
now.
no, he's outside the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And no, it's not outside.
No, it was.
It's making itself visible outside the door, but it's something that's just, a door won't keep it out because it's not part of a physical world.
No, it's like
and these entities live parallel to us, and I know this scares the hell out of a lot of people when I tell them this, but they're all over. They're everywhere.
Yep.
But so is bacteria, and I don't freak out knowing that there is bacteria everywhere and little mites or whatever on my eyelashes. It's just like that. It's part of the natural world, but just like, you know, things can be harmful. You get too much of a bad bacteria and it makes you sick. So I'm not saying that this thing is bacteria. It is part of the natural world, but it can be manageable. And it also sounds like these other things that are coming around could be human ghosts coming through, and it could just be more energy. You know,
I've asked one of these before.
yeah, there's nobody just has one. You know, people talk about my guardian angel or my guide. Nobody has just one. We are surrounded by our ancestors and by our guides and our angels, and they're around. They're not watching us in a creepy kind of way, but they're just there. So like when you go, help, something's there. It may be there to say, yeah, you got yourself in this, deal with it kind of thing. But but I'm thinking that you are both very in tune to things beyond the physical realm, the beyond the corporeal. And so when there's things around, you're going to perceive them. I'm like that. For years, I had things walk through my room every night, and it was exhausting. And wherever I went, it was like, you know, and and I finally said, knock it off. You know, I put my closed for business sign up until I take my closed for business sign off. And I choose, you know, just because someone's walking down the street doesn't mean they can just walk into my house. But if there's somebody walking down the street and I notice they need help or something, I'll say, hey, I'll help you. Even if they knock on the door, doesn't mean they have to come for supper. And you can do that with the spirit entities that are around you. You don't have to be afraid of them, and you don't have to just give in to what they want. You have in your reality the combination of your physical selves and your spirit selves is so much more powerful in your reality than anything that is just spirit. And so when we remember that, when you remember that, you can protect yourself. And that's why sigils and protection spells and things work, because what you are doing is you're putting up your closed for business sign. And not only, it's the ritual that helps put your mind and your energy into it, but it isn't really the salt that keeps it away. It's you placing the salt and your intention and saying, this is my boundary. It's like building the door to your room. This is my boundary. And having very specific, now saying it isn't the salt, there are things that work better than others. So but you could do it with anything. I've been places where I had to put up a protection and I just, I use my own energy. I use, whatever is there. I'll see a pebble and put my energy in it and place that to block the door. But it's the intention of doing it. It's saying, this is my space. This is my lifetime. Yes, you may be part of it. And I see you. I recognize that you're here and you're experiencing my life alongside me, but this is my life. This is mine to experience in my way. Thank you for warning me when there are things in danger, like with that damn Ouija board. Thanks for telling me to get out of here when I need to. I really appreciate that. Acknowledge that, but don't let it own you.
Had a good Shadow and I have had a good I mess with you, you mess with me, I mess with you, you mess with me mentality. So it's never truly hurt me. It's definitely put strain on me mentally, because before Courtney came into my life, I was not happy. I was never a happy person. Shadow's never liked me being happy. I can definitely tell that now. Because once Courtney came in, my whole life kind of just 360.
Shadow threw every stick and stone to get me to leave when I came in.
Okay.
Every single thing that he could attempt to throw at there, it was there. Mm-hmm. Including himself when he threw himself at my car.
Mm-hmm. Right. You're sure you didn't hit a guy that ended up in the ditch?
I'm 100% serious. Because there was nothing around. There wasn't a lick of anything. Except Shadow.
Yep. Shadow just... Shadow's made himself known to multiple people too. Like, Shadow likes to poke and prod everywhere. I got, especially with my knee, when I don't know if I told you, but there was one time I saw Shadow at my sister's with my two goddaughters, and I'm very protective of them. I am willing to die for them if need be. And the second I saw Shadow there, it wasn't oh, Shadow's making me mad. No, I'm mad that you're even here. You need to leave. You need to get gone. Like, Shadow would peek around by their room, and I'm like, no, this is not happening. Like, I didn't address him because I don't want the girls noticing him, because I think that's how it starts, really. But, like, I was like,
no, he's yours.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's not.
But he'll probably be somebody else's when you die. I don't think I don't think he will attach to anyone else. This is my guess. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. But it will interact with things around you.
I don't think you're wrong. He's not done with me. I can definitely tell that. Shadow.
He'll be there again in the room when your time is really done.
Oh yeah.
And at that time, he won't be scary at all because you'll be old friends.
He's gonna give me that chair that he was sitting in.
Ha! Well, hey, listen, it's after 10. Thank you so much for sharing your story tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for hearing it.
Yeah, thanks for giving us a little bit of an answer.
Yeah, well,
we've been trying to figure out what it is. At least I have for the last 7 years of knowing him. So
it's not an answer. It's my take, And I don't, you know, I have learned, I'm an old woman, and I've learned that I don't believe anything because I keep learning and keep learning new things. So I think things, and I have learned some things to be true, and then I learn new things. So good luck with you guys.
Thank
I
you,
hope to see you in person when the pandemic is over and you come up visit. You better come see me.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
When it's not winter.
Take care. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thanks again. Bye.